Terrell Pierre from Strive Hip Hop and Social Magazine. Welcome to another episode of Pull Up. Today I have with me a very special guest. His story is a story of injustice, conspiracy, and deception. But not just that, it's also a story of triumph, forgiveness, and closure. His story has touched thousands of people from all over the country, from all walks of life. Today I have with me Isaac Knapper. Isaac Knapper's story is a story that was a very high profile case that took place back in 1979. And he has written a book called Fighting Time with his co-author, Amy Banks. Amy Banks is the daughter of the person that Isaac Knapper was accused of murdering back in 1979, Dr. Professor Ronald Banks. He was on his way from the French quarters back to his hotel at the Hyatt Regency when he was brutally attacked and a struggle took place and he was shot. His daughter and Isaac Knapper has just co-written a book. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Isaac, for giving us this exclusive interview. Man, I'm just trying to wrap my thoughts around this. You've just written a book with the daughter of the person that you was accused of murdering. Wow. Take us back to that night when you was arrested.
First of all, I want to thank y'all for giving me this interview and helping promote the book. Well, April 12th, 1979, was the date and year and month that the crime was committed. I happened to be at home on that day. That night, I had about 12 witnesses that testified in trial that I was at home with my family when it happened. And when the police come to the house and they arrested me, they told me that I was charged with first-degree murder and that they claimed I killed a doctor, and I didn't know what was going on at the time. 16 years old, just turning 16 years old, my mind wasn't fully developed like it should have been, and I was ignorant to the law. And but at the same time, I felt like justice would be served, and they would find out the truth eventually. But I was wrong. Justice is broken. It's like the system, period, is broken. And when they arrested me, they took me to central lockup, and all the paperwork had to go through process and everything. They allowed me to get a special visit the very next day. My mom and my father, parents, come visit me and asked me what happened. And I didn't know what to tell them because I didn't know what happened. I was trying to find out what happened myself. And I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And murder, that's all flashing in my mind. Murder, I didn't kill nobody. I don't own a gun. Why would they say that? Yeah, and so it was like, I didn't know what was going on. Well, anyway, the process continued, and they told me I was going to the big house and that I was going to get the death sentence. They was going to sentence me to the electric chair because the legal injection wasn't out there. It was the electric chair, And they said that you killed this man and we got you. Then they started claiming that I killed other people. They just couldn't catch me. And it was just, maybe they were scandalizing my name so bad, and I couldn't understand why. Why would you scandalize a kid's name like that? I was, like I said, I was still a kid, and they claimed that I did this and did that, and so we went through the preliminary hearings and everything, and we went to trial. I said, well, they'll find out the truth. Because I had faith in the system. I'm thinking that the system gonna do the right thing. Yeah, and so I said, well, they'll find out the truth. We going to trial today, and they kept coming. Before trial, first of all, they was trying to get me to plead guilty to a crime I didn't commit. A crime, not only that I didn't commit, I didn't know anything about it. And so they kept saying they tried to rough me up, put me in the hospital, broke my ribs, had to have an operation on both sides of my chest. And in fact, I think we're gonna have pictures in that book when I was in the hospital. So I wouldn't confess. They went to my mom. They asked my mother, they said, look, you need to get him to plead guilty, because if you don't, he's gonna get the electric chair. And you don't wanna see your son die in the electric chair. And my mom was afraid, she was scared. She'd never been in a position like this. So my mom even tried to get me to plead guilty to keep me from getting the electric chair. I said, Mom, you know what you're asking me to do? She said, but Jerry, that's the only way they're gonna, she called me Jerry, you know. She said, but Jerry, that's the only way they're gonna not give you the death sentence. And they're gonna keep beating you, jumping on you. You've been in the hospital twice. You know, and my mom was just afraid. She was scared. She just wanted me to live, whether it was in prison or on the street. She didn't want me to die.
You was 16 years old. You was also a boxer.
Right.
You was doing the Olympic trials. You was going through the trials to go to the Olympics, to represent your country.
Right.
So you hadn't even finished high school yet. I'm quite sure many times you pledged your allegiance to the flag in school, and I know that you was going to fight for your country. You was going to be proud to be an American Olympic hero if you had made it and won all the way. Because that's a crime within itself, because that's something we'll never know. Because that was taken away from you. Yeah. But everybody in your community was pulling for you. I mean, and all of a sudden, you find yourself being beaten by the police, thrown into the hospital, and then thrown into prison by inmates that had actually done what you was accused of doing. So now we're talking about a 16-year-old who's on his way to the Olympics, well-known families in the community, never been in prison, in adult prison in his life, thrown in prison with rapists, murderers, and people that's done heinous crimes. I can't imagine. You must have had to grow up fast. This must have.
Well, speaking of being in there with rapists and killers and robbers and everything like that, my cellie, a guy that was in a cell with me, was serving 3 life sentences. And I didn't even have a conviction yet. You know, I was still in the process of going to trial. And I found out later that they wasn't supposed to put me in a cell with somebody that had already been through trial and got sentenced to 3 lives and about to be transferred to the penitentiary. Right, and I hadn't been sentenced yet. Right. And I didn't know what was going on, but the guy told me, he said, why they got you in the cell with me? I have 3 life sentences. You don't even have them. You innocent until proven guilty. They're not supposed to have you in the cell with me, you know. But I didn't know. You know, like I said, I was ignorant to the facts and didn't know exactly what was going on. So it went on and on and on and on and on. And like I said, going to trial, I figured the system would help me. You know, they would find out that I'm innocent. And when I seen what was going on in trial, I just couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my ears. You know, and I'm listening to what's going on, and man, it was terrible. You know, when it came back with a guilty verdict the same day, and you know, high-profile cases like that normally take a few weeks. My trial lasted 1 day. 1 day, they convicted me. They found me guilty, railroaded me, and convicted me. Gave me natural life.
You said railroaded you. What were some of the things that could have made a difference in your trial?
It would have made a difference like after about 12 and a half years when my conviction was overturned. if they would have presented the evidence to my defense attorney, things would have been different. It would have probably been a different outcome. But what happened, they withheld exculpatory materials, and they didn't present it.
And that evidence was.
And that evidence that they withheld, you know, it was proven that when they investigated this murder case, they found out through their investigation that the guy who actually pulled the trigger was a real dark-skinned guy, and he was a black man. Yeah, I'm a black man, but my complexion is light, you know. So the eyewitness even stated that the guy who we seen with the gun in his hand and broke out running, it was two of them, and they was black men, and their complexion was black. It was not light skinned.
It's obvious you're like
right. Yeah, but they held all that back.
That's major.
And yeah, and even with the shirt deal, the guy who testified against me, he pled guilty to the murder. And over the years, I started to learn and believe that his brother may have had something to do with it, and he was trying to save his brother. So they got him to plead guilty. He pled guilty to manslaughter, and he testified against me. And he claimed they asked him. They said, "Well, what color shirt, clothing was Mr. Knapper wearing?" I told him that I was the worst juvenile in the state of Louisiana.
Somebody who's going
right.
to
that's
training to go to the Olympics.
That's
the dirtiest person.
I had a promising career. We know that my life got derailed at a very young age after trying to represent the U.S. in Olympic trials. But Amy, and I'm listening to the doctor talk to me, and she's telling me these things that the FBI.
So they demonize your character.
Exactly. They told him that I killed many people. It's just that they couldn't get me, but they got me now, and I'll never see the streets again. You know, so, and I mean, if you're listening to one side of a story, of course, and you don't have another side to believe in. You can only believe what you heard until otherwise. And so they never had heard my story or my side of the story of what happened, what actually took place. They just went off of what happened in trial, you know, and what the FBI told them, you know, until they met me in person, and they started doing their own research and investigating, and they found out for themselves, and they seen what type of person I am, you know, and so.
Right, so you was denounced.
Yeah.
But what actually made these people want to meet you? I'm quite sure that once that thing had happened, once you say, hey, I want to meet him for this reason, it had to be some very emotional things going on inside. Not only you, but inside of them.
Yeah.
Them. I'm about to meet someone that was accused of killing my father. And you yourself, wow, how these people.
Yeah. You know, when Lori called me, and she said, because they got in touch with Lori first, with Judge Lori.
For what reason?
To meet me, and because Lori represented me on getting my conviction overturned.
I guess where I'm going is, they must have heard of you being exonerated.
Yeah, what happened was, I think it was Nancy, the other sister, who was 8 years old at the time when her father was killed. Nancy, her husband, he's like a computer whiz, and he was on his computer and everything, and he ran my name.
Okay.
And he seen where I was free.
Okay.
And so he told his wife, he said, the guy who was accused of killing your father is free. He's a free man.
Right.
And so they started trying to get in touch with me.
They must have had a good really.
Right. And so they got in touch with Lori. First, I think when they first found out that my conviction was overturned, the first thing they was wondering, well, ain't nobody who's I mean, my father was killed. Somebody's supposed to be
Right,
arrested.
that's what I'm saying. It must
So-
have there's
Yeah,
something very emotionally going on inside of them. Now, hey, look, a person that's known for killing people, that's killed my father, now he's free?
yeah,
You know, I can
Right,
kind of
exactly.
imagine something like that
yeah.
taking place.
Right, and so they got in touch with Lori, with Judge Lori, and Lori called me. She said, Isaac, the lady, Dr. Amy, and her sister Nancy wants to meet you. That was the doctor, the professor, Mr. Banks, Ronald Banks. That was his children at the time, and they want to meet you. And I'm like, they want to meet me. I mean, I don't mind meeting them. And they, you know, so Laura said, well, if you want to meet them, I can make arrangements, and I'll call them back and let them know that you don't mind meeting them. And so I said, yeah, of course, I don't mind meeting them. I would love to meet them, because I thought about the younger daughter, Nancy. She was 8 years old at the time, and I used to think about her all the time when I was in prison, what she could be going through, the loss of her father, you know, at 8 years old. So I felt like it would be a good thing for us to meet, and so they caught a flight, came down here. I think a couple of weeks later they came down here, and we met at Laura's at the courtroom, and we in the judge chamber. And when we went in there, man, it's hard to explain what I felt. I mean, the emotions, like you said, was like running wild. And I'm looking at this, was once a baby, 8 years old when she lost her father. And I'm looking at her, and I thought about her so many years, you know, in prison. I used to think about her a lot. I felt like I knew her, and because I used to think about her so much, right? And man, and when we met and when we embraced, I didn't want to let her go. Yeah, I didn't want to let her go. We hugged each other, bro, and it was like a moment. Tears started coming down. You know?
Because I can imagine, there's like, wow, this person done how long? 15 years?
Yeah, 14 and a half
Done
years.
14 and a half years falsely for killing my father. You know, I can imagine what his family was going through. And at the same time, I'm 8 years old without a father. I know my family, I can imagine what their family was going through as well. I don't know the people, I never met them. But I can imagine that their family went through a lot of emotions as well. And now these two people meet.
Yeah.
You know, it had to feel a lot of emotion. What I get from this, what I personally get from this is that, you know, even though injustice had taken place, but I think this book can be used as a blueprint to show that, it was all walks of lives involved.
That's right.
Different walks of lives involved in this. That we can actually come together, embrace each other, understand each other, and work on something that's very broken, the system.
Right, exactly.
That's what I can actually get from this.
Yeah.
What would you like for your readers to get from this story?
Well, and the book it's going to be it's a must read. You know, the book is very exciting. It has some happy moments, some sad moments. You know, you would really love to read this book. You know, you would really love to read this book, because we, like Terrell said, we talking about two families from two different parts of the world. You know, and what I went through as being convicted for this crime that I didn't commit, and what my family went through, what my mother went through, and my father went through, losing their son to the system, to a broken system, and what Dr. Amy, her and her family went through, you know, losing their father, you know, and even their brother, you know, took it real hard. From what I understand, you know, she was telling me about her brother, how he took it real hard, and he was like me or you, anybody that lost their father in a guy is charged of it, accused of it, or whatever. You know, from what I understand, he was thinking bad things about me. You know, what the sisters was telling me that their brother was
I can imagine.
real hard. Yeah,
I can imagine. I mean,
right. And that's
So
another
really-
thing, like what I just said, knowing one side. You know, when you listening to one side and you setting in trial, because her brother set through, he set through trial. You know, why it was going on, and you know, but he wrote me a long letter when my kids got exonerated, and I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Amy Banks and Nancy and her daughter, husband, and her brother. He wrote me a nice letter, you know, and he forgave me for the way he felt, and he asked for my apology, you know, for he wanted to apologize to me, you know, for feeling the way he felt, you know, and because he was feeling terrible about this case, you know, and I told him I forgive you for how you felt, you know, and but again, you know, we real close. We done became real close. We close friends, you know. We the next thing to the family, you know, and like I said, we stay in touch. We always on the phone with one another. We send each other gifts, you know, and stuff like that, you know.
I know a lot of people is getting involved with the book now.
Yeah.
You're doing some Zoom, some
Yeah,
taking place.
we have a meeting March 19th, I think, and we're gonna be on Zoom again April 12th, which is the anniversary, you know, of her father. And they also republishing her father's book. He had a book that he wrote about the history of Maine, and because he was a history professor, and he wrote this book about the history of Maine, where he's from, and that was 50 years ago. So they're republishing his book too on the 12th, April 12th. So, it's good things starting to happen. You know.
How can we get this book?
Well, you can go on a link. You can go on Dr. Amy Banks and Isaac Knapper through Reader Publishing Company. Yeah, and it'll pop right up. When you mention the name, Dr. Amy Banks and Isaac Knapper story.
And that book is Fighting.
It's Fighting Time.
Fighting Time.
Yeah, the name of the book is Fighting Time, and it'll pop up from our Reader Publishing Company. So it'll pop right up, and it's under a pre-order right now. So
I have one last question for you. How do you feel about the system now, and what do you think things is going now? Because your book is still relevant today, even though it was about 40 some years ago. It's still relevant because we still see the same injustice in the judicial system.
right.
Do you feel optimistic due to some of the things that's been taking place lately, the Black Lives movements, the police reform,
Brutality and everything.
right? And then some of the reform movements. Are you optimistic?
These white supremacists that seem like they think one way, you know, we got Black Panthers, we got all these different people, different race people, and everybody is kind of like at war with one another, you know. I see change taking place right now because we done came a long way, even though we still got a long way to go. But we done came a long way, and as far as the judiciary system, I think all that's a part of it. You know, with things starting to come to the light now. We didn't have the technology back then that we have now. You know, so now our kids starting to know about these things. They can do research now. You know, at one point, like we couldn't do research. You know, so now with like I said, with all this new technology now, everything can come to the light. Anything you want to know, you can Google it. You know, and it'll tell you about it. So with the system changing, they changing because they have to. Yeah, because they have to, because of the technology now. Like I said, at one point we didn't know these things. We knew that they was doing wrong. We know we was being done wrong, but it was nothing we can do
It
about
was
it.
kind of hidden
Right.
to the, yeah.
Exactly. Now with the social media and everything, and we know how the social media are. I mean, we know about everything in the world now. So now they have no choice but to change. They got to, because it's anything, they can't do nothing that's not unknown.
Once again, Terrell Pierre from Strive Hip Hop and Social Magazine. We just did an exclusive interview with Isaac Knapper, who has just written a book, co-written a book with Dr. Amy Banks, book called Fighting Time. I'd like to thank you, Isaac, for giving us this exclusive interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much.